Our top story for tonight, OTAs are well underway. And we have some news, some coach speak. We have some depth chart updates. We've got all of that and more right after this. Most of the NFL clubs have kicked off their optional training. It's now May 23rd, and teams are wanting to get ramped up into practices, especially for players who are coming off of injuries or rookies. So some of the players that have been of note as of late, Aaron Rodgers is at OTAs with the Jets, and he, according to reports, was very sharp and was making good throws to, the secondary, tertiary players like Allen Lazard, right, that he already has a rapport with. If you're looking for a last round Jet stack in your best ball leagues, consider like Allen Lazard, who had a bad year last year, but can we chalk it up to, bad quarterback play, not knowing the scheme, not having chemistry with the quarterback, Zach Wilson, among others. But you can think that Rodgers does favor the players he's had chemistry with before. And yes, Lazard maybe number 4, number 5 on the depth chart, but he could easily sneak into that wide receiver 2-3 spot on the New York Jets. Garrett Wilson is obviously your number 1. Mike Williams is coming off a big injury, and he's always been dealing with injuries. Then we also look at rookie Malachi Corley, who is an early 3rd round pick. Yes, we like Malachi Corley, but the problem is it may take a little bit of time for a player like Corley to get acclimated. Certainly Rodgers has been incorporating Corley in their offseason program. It looks like there were reports he was willing to share his guest house with Malachi Corley, but to immediately integrate the rookie, it's going to have to take a little bit more. And so that's why I think Allen Lazard, at least for a couple weeks, is a player that we need to be looking at our radar and saying, hey, this is a player that is of interest. So Aaron Rodgers makes his return to the New York Jets, looks very crisp according to reports. We also got news out of the LA Rams that Kyren Williams is dealing with a foot injury, and we've seen Kyren Williams' ADP continue to plummet in reaction to the Blake Corum drafting, and now this foot injury. Coach Sean McVay has come out and said that it is not serious. He expects everything to be just fine, but we've seen that Kyren Williams is a player that has dealt with injury before, and it's cost him a lot. Like his rookie year, Kyren Williams' first play of the season on special teams ends up getting injured, out for the rest of the year. And Williams dealt with injuries last year throughout the offseason, or throughout the grind of the season. He missed snaps, he missed games. And so, yes, Kyren Williams now still nursing a foot injury. That's an eyebrow raise, and it's another reason why Blake Corum is a massive target for us, not only because of the draft capital, not only because of the Kyren Williams injury, but also because, according to Jordan Rodriguez out of The Athletic, Blake Corum is being asked to develop a 3-down skill set. The reality is that Kyren Williams is also a 3-down type of back, and that the Rams drafted both Blake Corum and Kyren Williams to be able to handle those types of downs. And so Blake Corum in particular could step right in and be a top 5 running back in the NFL. That's what we've seen from the Todd Gurley's of the world. That's what we've seen from Kyren Williams. And now Blake Corum can step into that massive handcuff role. We believe it. Corum is good at football. He had the best PFF rush grade 2 years ago before his injury. And last year he looked very good as well, coming off of the knee injury. And so Blake Corum fits very well. We want to be drafting a lot of Blake Corum in our best ball leagues. He's been going in the 100s to the 120s. And so we would anticipate that as Kyren Williams dips down, because remember, Kyren was a 1-2 turn type of player, that now he is, I've seen him drop into the late 20s, into the early 30s. I've seen 28. I've seen 32 in the draft streets. So Kyren Williams' ADP is continuing to drop. And I told Matt Kelly on draft night, when Blake Corum was selected and Kyren Williams was still there, Matt asked me straight up. He said he wanted to know, where is Kyren Williams going to end up this offseason? I said, eventually Kyren Williams is he's going to be a seventh round pick, because there's going to be so much hype for Blake Corum. We're going to see, a lot of best ball bros push up Blake Corum because of the week 17, the anticipation that Blake Corum is just simply better. He's going to take over the role. And that's certainly within the range of outcomes. And if he does take over the role, he's a massive, massive smash at ADP. And we'll continue to push him up into the 90s and the 80s, in the 70s, and kind of see a convergence of ADPs between Blake Corum and Kyren Williams, despite the fact that Kyren Williams absolutely smashed last year. So yes, Blake Corum is being asked to develop a 3-down skill set. It seems like they've been asking a lot of him early on in this offseason. I anticipate that Blake Corum will be used a lot, even in week 1. And so regardless of a Kyren injury, Kyren Williams, though, is a player that we've seen value continue to plummet throughout the offseason. I do want pieces of this Rams backfield, so people will often ask, like, where is he going to fall? And I want to continue to click Kyren. I want to continue to click Blake Corum, because I want pieces of this Rams offense. We know that they're going to score lots of fantasy points, and so certainly we want to be clicking Blake Corum, but that doesn't mean we ignore completely Kyren Williams. Yes. Another update is that Ezekiel Elliott is being asked to split first team reps with Rico Dowdle. And according to reports, it's been about 50-50. And Rico Dowdle, according to reports, has also looked very good at OTAs. And so Ezekiel Elliott wants a shell of himself. He's not a great rusher. He is more of a plotter. There's plenty of efficiency metric data to support that, whether it is yards after contact per attempt, whether it is explosive runs. Ezekiel Elliott on a per rate, in a rate type of efficiency metric, he's not near the top of the league anymore. He is merely a yard gobbler. But what Ezekiel Elliott can do is he can pass block. And so that's one of the things that the Cowboys are going to ask Rico Dowdle to show that he can do, because Rico Dowdle might have juice. We know for sure Ezekiel Elliott does not have juice, but he may get the opportunity. And so that's why we do want to be taking shots at Rico Dowdle in the 130s. I've seen Rico Dowdle in the late 120s, and drafting him at those spots is a nice little 0 RB shot at a Dallas Cowboy running back offense that, yes, led to Tony Pollard disappointing last year, but not due to opportunity, just plain unluckiness for Tony Pollard last year. We want whoever is going to be the most explosive running back in Dallas. And my friend Dan Williamson has said time and again that he believes that the running back 1 for the Dallas Cowboys is not on the team yet. Certainly there's speculation that Miles Sanders could be one of those players. Khalil Herbert could be one of those players who is cut or moved on from, just to name a couple. But for now, it's Ezekiel Elliott and Rico Dowdle who are splitting first team reps for the Dallas Cowboys. The upside pick is Rico Dowdle, but we know Zeke isn't going to go away completely. That's just the reality with the legacy of Zeke being on the Dallas Cowboys. A few other notes before we take a break. Michael Pittman suffered an injury scare at Indy's OTA, Indianapolis Colts OTAs. Pittman was seen surrounded by trainers, but luckily it seems like he escaped a major injury, probably just going to be day to day, and we probably won't see much of him, for a while in terms of forcing his recovery. But a player we are going to see a lot from, and we have seen a lot from, is Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson, according to reports, is looking good. He's making crisp throws. He's throwing it all over the formation. According to reports, he is throwing the ball smoothly, but still feels a little achy. The Colts want him to get all of the reps that he can, coming off of the shoulder injury that cost him the majority of the 2023 season. So Anthony Richardson is a player that has top 5, if not QB1 overall upside in terms of fantasy success. He has the pathway to achieve that, given the Jalen Hurts role, and Shane Steichen, who we remember was the Philadelphia Eagles offensive coordinator, now the head coach for the Indianapolis Colts. And so fantasy managers shouldn't be afraid to project future success for this offense and take advantage of the ADPs. You can pretty easily get Anthony Richardson and Michael Pittman Jr. on the same team. Another player in the Colts that is impressing is Jelani Woods, tight end, who missed almost all of the 2023 season due to hamstring injuries. Jelani Woods, a big, athletic tight end. Certainly there's a lot of love for many of the tight ends, the Drew Ogletrees of the world, right, on the Indianapolis Colts. But Jelani Woods, per beat writers, is looking to be the tight end 1, and he's going for free in most of your fantasy drafts. So consider drafting a lot of Jelani Woods. He's got the size, build, athleticism, and the opportunity, frankly, to win the tight end 1 role in Indianapolis. So consider drafting some Jelani Woods late in your fantasy drafts, especially given the ambiguity at the tight end position for Indy. This is the first sign that we've gotten clarity about who may emerge as the lead tight end for the Colts. We want to be in on Jelani Woods. All right. So it is Dynasty season, and Player Profiler has you covered with the Dynasty Deluxe. Let's take a listen.
This episode is brought to you by Player Profiler, the Dynasty Deluxe package. The rankings are the best in the industry. It includes strategy mode, where you can say, hey, change the rankings to be win now. Oh, change the rankings to be productive struggle. There's also a draft planner to help to strategize where you should take players, because the draft planner also includes ADP. There's a trade finder where we look up on My Fantasy League and we see trades that are done, including a particular player. Then there's a trade analyzer where you can plug in draft picks, players, and we assign a lifetime value to draft picks out 5 years. The best thing about our trade analyzer, it can't be gamed with volume. And there's mock draft data to see right now what's the market for player X versus player Y, including in the fall when very few mock drafts are happening. And our Dynasty Guide, the Dynasty Dominator, would cost you $10 on Amazon, but you get it for free with Dynasty Deluxe, and you get our Rookie Guide for free, a $25 value. So you get all of that for $45. I mean, it's a great deal.
That's right. It is a great deal. Get the Dynasty Deluxe today in preparation for many of your Dynasty drafts that either are in progress or are going to happen. I have one Dynasty draft that's not happening for another month and a half. I am preparing for it, certainly, and will monitor where all of these running backs end up falling. But for me in particular, like the Blake Corum news bumps him up to immediate production level possibility, early second round selection. Who's going to stop Blake Corum being drafted in the top 15 of your rookie dynasty drafts, regardless of format? We like the Blake Corum deal. My name is Bradley Stalder. Make sure you're following me on Twitter at FFStalder. If you like all of the news that comes out of Player Profiler Today, make sure that you are checking out playerprofiler.com/news, where we have some of the greatest content creators in Player Profiler providing you with news updates providing you with some video content, written content, and playerprofiler.com/news gives you a stream of how the news is. So you want to be in tune with what is happening in OTAs. We've got you covered at playerprofiler.com/news. Make sure you're also smashing the subscribe button on the YouTube channel, Player Profiler News channel on YouTube. Just hit the subscribe button. Helps us continue to make great content here on Player Profiler News. Thank you so much. Again, I'm Bradley Stalder. I'm the director of the news desk here at Player Profiler. Happy to be bringing you more news from OTAs. Another underlying injury news item that has been underreported. Well, we'll actually talk about two running backs who had underreported injuries. And that's Josh Jacobs and Bijan Robinson, both dealing with seemingly minor injuries. But if they're already having injuries in May, this is worth monitoring. And this is another reason why we want to be drafting the Marshawn Lloyds and the Tyler Algiers of the world. If those players go into full-time roles, Tyler Algier, Marshawn Lloyd, they are poised to be the running back one in very fantasy relevant offenses. We've seen what Tyler Algier can be, which is a top 12 to top 15 running back if he's given the full complement workload. We've seen Marshawn Lloyd play very well at USC. Yes, he had his fumbling issues, blah, 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 but the Packers are touting him as an explosive, dynamic back who can do everything. He can catch passes. He can rush. He just looks like he has juice. And so all of those reasons are why we want to be drafting, especially in zero RB builds, the opportunity to take a Tyler Algier or Marshawn Lloyd when these types of running backs are already dealing with nagging injuries. And you can get these running backs in the 130s and the 140s, in round 12, round 11, round 13 of your fantasy drafts, and they are worth the price of admission. All right. Speaking of players coming off of injuries, Daniel Jones is throwing at OTAs. This is great news for Daniel Jones bag holders. I mean, somebody's got to have Daniel Jones on their dynasty fantasy football teams, and he is the starter. The Giants did not draft a quarterback with plans to usurp Daniel Jones. Jones is the presumed starter, and he is expected to start week 1 per Daniel Jones. So when asked about it, Jones said, quote, "I don't have any doubt about it being ready for week 1. So Daniel Jones is one of those players that you can get super cheap at the quarterback 20s. Very, very cheap. And we've seen Daniel Jones give you quarterback 15, quarterback 12 finishes in fantasy points per game. And this is the first time that Daniel Jones has had a wide receiver like Malik Neighbors to throw to. And Darren Waller technically hasn't retired yet. And you still have Darius Slayton. You have a few other pieces like Jalen Hyatt who could explode in year 2. And so we look at Daniel Jones, who's finally surrounded with a little bit more weaponry. And yes, he's coming off the ACL as a mobile quarterback. But we saw what Kyler Murray was able to do coming back from the ACL tear. He still got some rushing touchdowns. He still got 20, 30 rushing yards. Like, the reality is that if he's comfortable running, he's going to run. He's going to be out there. He's going to throw. And so Daniel Jones is a player that I think is undervalued in the fantasy football streets for 2024, given that he is a starter and we've seen upgraded weapons. Now, the running backs, not great. Like you've got Devin Singletary, Tyrone Tracy. That's what we're looking at in terms of running back. Fine. Daniel Jones isn't going to throw the running back much anyways. And it's not like if he's going to throw it to them, he's going to get a lot of fantasy points from it. He's going to be looking downfield. He's going to be looking at Malik Neighbors, Darius Slayton, Jalen Hyatt. Those are the players that are most interesting for Jones. So Yeah, there are a few other news items that I think are really interesting for us. I don't think that we've tuned into the fact that the Buffalo Bills have agreed to terms with Marquez Valdez-Scantling. The reality is that MVS was not good for fantasy football, and I still don't anticipate that he will be good again for the Bills. But his role is very interesting because he's like Gabe Davis 2.0, except just a little worse. That's the reality. And so when you have a field stretcher, Keon Coleman is not that type of field stretcher. You've got Curtis Samuel, who can operate really well close to the line of scrimmage. He can be used in different formations, in sweeps, manufactured touches. So those are like different roles that the Buffalo Bills are still trying to fill in. And look, it's Chase Claypool, right, who's trying to get another crack at the Buffalo Bills and regaining what's going on in his career. But there's not a lot of optimism. MVS brings at least a consistent veteran presence and probably a 10% target share along with him, can get a couple deep passes. But MVS signing with the Buffalo Bills is more of an NFL move than what we would consider a fantasy move. And around 18 selection is probably the best that I would give an MVS consideration if I was drafting in Buffalo Bills stacks. But if we're looking at a more explosive player who the coaches have been touting, is Jameson Williams. For the first time, seemingly since he was drafted, Jameson Williams got praise from head coach Dan Campbell. At OTAs, Lions coach Dan Campbell said that Jameson Williams is the team's most improved player this offseason and called him a man on a mission, per Pride of Detroit on the X Machine. Oh, man. We could be looking at Will Fuller 2.0. And we know Will Fuller, yes, right, disappeared off the face of the planet with a mysterious hand injury. But that's what you're going to have to deal with in terms of those types of wide receivers. It's definitely a pathway of disaster. And that's what Jameson Williams had been dealing with. Inconsistent play, not earning targets, suspension, right? Jameson Williams, though, if he is the most improved player for the Lions and he continues to work toward earning that opportunity to be the wide receiver 2 behind Amon-Ra St. Brown, look out. The price for admission to Jameson Williams is going to increase throughout the offseason. Now is the time to get the Jameson Williams stock because Dan Campbell knows what he's talking about. If we look at the Coach Speak Index, Dan Campbell is usually pretty accurate in terms of how he's going to employ and evaluate his players. If he says a player's being inconsistent, they're not going to get playing time. If he says a player has to earn their role, that's not a good sign. And that's what we were hearing about Jameson Williams earlier in the offseason, that he needs to earn the outside wide receiver role. He needs to do X, Y, and Z to get the start. He's going to compete for the starting role is the exact quote. And so Jameson Williams getting this praise from Dan Campbell, that matters. Dan Campbell knows what he's doing. He knows what he's talking about. And the Lions have indicated to us this offseason, they had the opportunity to make a splash play in the draft. They had an opportunity to sign some free agents. They did not. In fact, they let Josh Reynolds go to the Denver Broncos. And Josh Reynolds is a nice role player on the outside. So it's just Jameson Williams, Khalif Raymond, Donovan Peoples-Jones. No, it's Jameson Williams. This is the signal that we've been waiting for Jameson Williams truthers. So let's be drafting. Let's be targeting Jameson Williams. This is news. This is not just smoke. This is real fire for Jameson Williams. All right. Whew. There we go. Gotta get that off my chest. We've got another depth chart update, and this is going to be reflected very soon on PlayerProfiler.com. If you have a subscription, you can check out the depth charts on Player Profiler. But per Benjamin Benjamin Albright at Albright NFL on the X Machine, who follows the Denver Broncos, he said, barring injuries, he thinks the Denver running back room is Javonte Williams, the RB1, Audric Estime as the RB2, already supplanting Jaleel McLaughlin, 3 Jaleel McLaughlin, and 4 Blake Watson. Samaje Perine, the odd man out. Maybe Samaje Perine ends up on the Dallas Cowboys. But Benjamin Albright usually has a pulse of how Denver is going to operate. Javonte, Audric Estime, Jaleel McLaughlin, and Blake Watson in that order. So Blake Watson truthers like me, rejoice. He's on the depth chart as the RB4, already supplanting Samaje Perine. Javonte Williams, though, the RB1 still. And he's going in about RB28, RB30 in your fantasy drafts. I still like Audric Estime as a nice upside play because he's going to get first and second down work. But he was also asked to catch passes at the University of Notre Dame. We like Estime. I think Estime is a regime guy. So if Javonte continues to produce inefficiency, we could look at Audric Estime as one of those later round fantasy gems. And yet again, like Kyren Williams 2.0, who was tagged as unathletic, but produced in college, was asked to do a lot, could do a lot, became a coach's favorite, and earned a starting role. So I think that that's how we want to operate. We want to be targeting Audric Estime. Okay, this is great. I feel like we've hit on a lot of the most recent OTA news items. Make sure you guys are subscribing to the Player Profiler News channel. Make sure you guys are checking out playerprofiler.com/news. This has been great. My name is Bradley Stalder. You can follow me on the X Machine at FF Stalder. Yes, we've got more news. We've got updates. We've got videos all on playerprofiler.com/news. But also, you know, I want you guys to check all of these things out because our content creators do such a great job. All right. It's clear that OTAs have started. The news has been rolling in. There are some actionable items regarding Kyren Williams, Jameson Williams, and Audric Estime. So make sure you guys are checking out all of those things because you don't want to be missing out on a piece of news where it'll cost you, right, in these drafts, especially in May, where you're thinking to yourself, who am I drafting against? Well, I'm drafting against probably some sharps. There's not as many casuals at this time of the year. Once we get into July, you're going to get some of the casuals. We're going to be missing out on things, but you don't want to be behind in the 8-ball. And instead, we have playerprofiler.com/news for free. You don't need a subscription to Player Profiler. Just bookmark it on your mobile device. Just click add bookmark to your phone screen, to your iPad, whatever it is. Check out playerprofiler.com/news. It's been great talking with y'all, giving OTA updates. These are really actionable things, and we'll continue to get more out of you. I will be with you next week on the 30th to give more updates as we get them from OTAs and any other news. Make sure you guys are checking out Player Profiler Today, both from me and from all the other Player Profiler Today creators. It's 7 p.m. every day on the Player Profiler News channel. Until next time, everyone, good luck in the fantasy football streets.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you, allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All-In Package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.